In 1975, a 24-year-old Kodak engineer named Steve Sasson built the world's first digital camera. It weighed 8 pounds. It captured images at 0.01 megapixels. It took 23 seconds to save a single black and white photo to a cassette tape. It was revolutionary. Kodak's executives saw the prototype and told Sasson to hide it. 37 years later, in 2012, Kodak filed for bankruptcy. The company that invented digital photography was destroyed by it. This is the story of how Kodak made the right invention at exactly the wrong time, and why having the best technology doesn't guarantee survival. To understand this disaster, you need to understand what Kodak was in 1975. The company controlled 90% of film sales in America and 85% of camera sales. They employed over 145,000 people worldwide. Kodak wasn't just a company. It was synonymous with photography itself. Their business model was brilliantly simple: sell cameras cheap, make massive profits on film and photo processing. Every photo taken, every memory captured, Kodak made money. It was a razor and blades model that printed cash. In 1974, Kodak's research lab manager gave 24-year-old engineer Steve Sasson an assignment: investigate this new thing called a CCD, a charge-coupled device image sensor. Sasson's task was simple: see if it could capture images. What he built changed everything. By December 1975, Sasson had created a working prototype. The camera was the size of a toaster, weighed 8 pounds, and was built from spare parts: a Super 8 movie camera lens, a digital cassette recorder, and 16 nickel-cadmium batteries. It captured 0.01 megapixel images, 100 by 100 pixels. Each photo took 23 seconds to record onto a cassette tape. To view the image, you had to connect the camera to a television. By modern standards, it was primitive. But in 1975, it was science fiction made real. Sasson demonstrated his invention to Kodak executives. Their reaction wasn't excitement. It was concern. One executive asked, "Why would anyone want to look at their pictures on a TV? And where's the print?" Another response, which Sasson later recounted, was more direct. "That's cute, but don't tell anyone about it." Here's where the story gets interesting. Kodak didn't ignore digital photography because they were stupid. They ignored it because they were too smart about their own business. Let's look at the numbers. In the 1970s, Kodak made roughly 70% of its profits from film and photo paper. Camera sales were almost a loss leader. The real money came from every roll of film sold and every print developed. A typical camera might cost $50 and last for years. But that customer would buy dozens of film rolls over the camera's lifetime, each generating profit. Then they'd pay for developing, and prints, and reprints for family members. One camera sale generated hundreds of dollars in recurring revenue. Digital photography destroyed this model completely. Digital cameras would let people take unlimited free photos. No film to buy, no developing to pay for, no physical prints necessary. Kodak's own research predicted that digital would eventually replace film. Their internal studies in the 1980s estimated digital would become mainstream by 2010. They were right. The problem wasn't their analysis, it was their response. The calculation was brutally simple. Investing heavily in digital meant cannibalizing their most profitable business. Film generated billions in high-margin revenue. Digital would generate what exactly? So Kodak made a choice. They would continue investing in film technology. They'd improve it, extend its life, defend their market share. Digital research could continue, in the lab, quietly, without disrupting the core business. To Kodak's credit, they didn't completely ignore digital. Between 1975 and 1990, they filed numerous patents on digital imaging technology. Steve Sasson continued his research. But they never committed, never bet the company on it, never risked their film profits. A former Kodak executive later admitted, "We developed the technology, but we were afraid to use it. We knew it would cannibalize film, and film was just too profitable to kill." While Kodak hesitated, their competitors didn't have the same problem. because they didn't have Kodak's film business to protect. In 1981, Sony announced the Mavica, the first consumer digital camera. It was still analog recording to magnetic disc, but the message was clear. The Japanese were coming for the camera market. Throughout the 1980s and 90s, companies like Fuji, Canon, and Nikon invested heavily in digital imaging. They had no film empire to cannibalize, so they could move fast. By 1994, Apple released the QuickTake 100, one of the first consumer digital cameras. It cost $749 and captured 0.3 megapixel images. Primitive by today's standards, but it sold. People wanted it. Kodak did release digital cameras. Their first consumer model, the DC-40, came out in 1995, 20 years after Sasson's invention. But they were always late, always cautious, always optimizing for protecting film sales rather than winning the digital market. Here's the brutal reality. Kodak was right about the timeline. Digital did take until roughly 2010 to fully replace film for most consumers. But when it happened fast. Film sales peaked around 2000 and collapsed within a decade. By 2008, film represented less than 30% of Kodak's revenue, and that revenue was evaporating. Meanwhile, Canon's market cap grew. Nikon thrived. Even Fuji, who also made film, survived by diversifying earlier and more aggressively. And then came the final blow: smartphones. The iPhone launched in 2007 with a 2-megapixel camera. The Samsung Galaxy followed. By 2010, billions of people carried cameras in their pockets. Not Kodak cameras, not even digital cameras from Canon or Nikon. Phone cameras. The entire dedicated camera market began to shrink. And Kodak, having already lost the digital camera war, had nothing left to fall back on. Let's talk numbers. In 1997, Kodak stock hit an all-time high of about $90 per share. The company was worth over $31 billion. By 2007, the stock had fallen to $25. By 2011, it was under $1. On January 19, 2012, Kodak filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. The company that once employed 145,000 people was down to 17,000. Factories closed. The iconic yellow boxes disappeared from store shelves. In bankruptcy, Kodak was forced to auction off its patent portfolio, including those digital imaging patents from the 1970s and 80s. They sold for about $525 million to a consortium of tech companies. The bitter irony? Kodak owned some of the most valuable intellectual property in digital photography. They just never built a sustainable business around it. Kodak did emerge from bankruptcy in 2013, but as a completely different company. Today, they focus on commercial printing and packaging. They employ about 4,500 people. They're a footnote in the industry they once dominated. From Steve Sasson's invention in 1975 to bankruptcy in 2012, 37 years. An entire life cycle of a technology, and the company that invented it managed to miss the entire wave. So what's the lesson here? Is this just a story about executives being short-sighted? Not quite. Kodak's leadership actually understood the threat. They saw it coming decades in advance. Their analysis was correct. Their technology was pioneering. What they couldn't do was destroy their own business model before someone else did. This is a perfect example of what Harvard professor Clayton Christensen called the innovator's dilemma. Successful companies are prisoners of their own success. Kodak, in 1975, faced an impossible choice: invest billions in a technology that would cannibalize their most profitable product, or protect their current business and hope they could transition later. They chose to wait, and waiting killed them. This pattern repeats constantly in tech. Blockbuster didn't embrace streaming because of their retail model. Detroit automakers resisted EVs to protect combustion engine business. Nokia dismissed touchscreens to protect their keyboard phone dominance. Steve Sasson, the inventor, later said, "We knew it would be big. We just couldn't figure out how to make money on it without killing film." The real question isn't whether Kodak should have invested in digital in 1975. It's whether they could have, given their incentives and business structure. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Sometimes the companies that invent the future aren't the ones that profit from it. Kodak invented digital photography. Canon, Nikon, and eventually Apple and Samsung built the business. From an 8-pound prototype that took 23 seconds per photo to billions of phones capturing trillions of images per year, the technology Kodak invented transformed the world. Just not for Kodak. The next time you hear about a company missing an obvious trend, remember Kodak. Sometimes the hardest innovations to adopt aren't the ones you don't see coming. They're the ones that require you to kill what made you successful in the first place. If you found this interesting, subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where we should go now. Thanks for watching.